One afternoon, Christabel's mother decided to surprise her in school with homemade food. But the moment she stepped through the gate and spotted Christabel standing with her classmates, everything changed. Christabel's laughter stopped as soon as her eyes fell on her mother. Her face flushed, her expression stiffened. "Who is that?" one of the girls beside her asked, looking curiously at the woman in modest clothes, holding the cooler filled with food she had poured her heart and love into. Christabel hesitated. She looked at her mother, then at her friends. Her lips trembled before she forced a smile and said, "Oh, that's just our maid at home." Her words pierced Stella, her mother, deeper than any blade ever could. The cooler nearly slipped off from her hands. In that moment, the food she had carried with pride became heavy with shame. She stopped, frozen, her heart crumbling inside her chest. That afternoon, Stella came to the school with love, but she left with a broken heart. But how did this thing get this way? How did a daughter reach the point of denying the very woman who gave her life? To understand this, we must return to where it all began. My people, this story is about to take another turn. I need you to stay behind, sit back, and listen attentively. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please, I beg you to do so to enjoy the beautiful African stories we bring your way. Now, let us go back to the story. Years earlier, in a small village far from the bustling city, Stella lived a life that was anything but easy. She was a woman of strength and quiet resilience. Every morning before the sun rose, she tied her wrapper firmly, fetched water, and prepared whatever little food she could manage for her children. Her hands were always busy, her spirit always weary, yet she carried herself with grace. Her husband, Jackson, was a farmer by name but never by responsibility. He spent more time in the local drinking spots than on his farmland. Whatever little he earned often disappeared into calabashes of palm wine. And whenever Stella asked him for money to feed the children, his temper rose like fire. Then their argument echoed through the walls of their home, leaving not only words but bruises on Stella's skin and deeper wounds in her heart. Together they had 7 children, all of them thin from hunger and clothed in torn garments. Among them was Christabel, their firstborn. She was only 9 years old, but her mind was brighter than her circumstances. In school, she was very intelligent, answering questions with boldness. Her teachers marveled at her sharpness, and her classmates admired her quick thinking. She dreamed of becoming someone greater than her surroundings, someone who could lift her family out of poverty. But dreams cost money, and Stella's pockets were always empty. Christabel's school fees became harder to pay, and eventually, the day came when Stella could no longer afford it. With tears in her eyes, she watched as Christabel's education was cut short in primary 5. From that moment, the little girl who once carried books in her hands now carried a basket of granuts on her head. Day after day, She walked the hot streets, balancing the basket, her young ones and her young voice calling out to passerby, "Granite! Granite!" Each step was heavy with disappointment, but Christabel never lost her smile. She still helped her mother with the younger ones, still comforted her siblings. They cried from hunger. Through it all, Stella's heart ached, not for herself, but for her children, especially for Christabel, whose intelligence deserved more than what life had given her. One day, during one of those long afternoons of hawking granules, with sweat trickling down her forehead and her small feet dusty from the road, Christabel's paths crossed with two strangers who would change the course of her life forever, Joy and Daniel. Joy and Daniel are lovely couples. They had wealth, comfort, and everything money could buy, but their hearts carried a silent emptiness. They had longed for a child for many years, yet their home remained quiet. That evening, Joy sat on the veranda with Daniel, sipping tea as they watched the sky fade. Then they heard a soft voice outside the gate. "Granite! Fresh granite!" Joy stood up and stepped closer. When she opened the gate, she found Christabel smiling politely, her basket resting against her little arms. Something about the girl's cheerful face caught her attention immediately. "Christabel, how are you today?" Joy asked warmly, recognizing her from previous visits because they have been patronizing her. "I am fine, man," Christabel replied, her voice bubbling with genuine excitement. "The market has been good today. I have sold a few cups of groundnuts already." Daniel leaned forward from his seat, studying the little girl. There was something unusual about the way she carried herself, so full of joy, despite the obvious hardship. "Tell me, Christabel," he asked gently, "how do you stay happy, walking about in the hot sun every day?" The girl looked at him with innocent eyes and answered without hesitation. "My mommy told me that if I sell enough groundnuts, she will pay my school fees and put me back in school. I love to learn. I want to make my mommy proud." Her words struck deep inside Joy and Daniel, and both of them exchanged a glance. And in that glance was a silent conversation, an ache that only both of them understood. Here was a child with so little, yet carrying dreams bigger than her circumstances. Joy reached out and touched Christabel's hand softly. "My dear, how would you feel if we helped you with your education? We have seen so much potential in you." Christabel's eyes widened, her little lips parting in shock. She could hardly believe her ears. "Do you mean you will do this for me?" she asked, her voice trembling with hope. "Yes," Joy replied firmly. A smile toggled at her lips. "We want to help you go back to school." Tears brimmed in Christabel's eyes. She placed the basket of groundnuts down and bent slightly in gratitude. Thank you so much. I am grateful." From that day, Joy and Daniel could no longer see Christabel as just another little girl selling groundnuts. To them, she became something more, a chance to fill the silence in their home, a chance to give love where it was most needed. And so they began to plan. Not only would they help with her education, but they also desired to make her a part of their family. The daughter they had longed for but never had. But first, they had to meet the people who had brought this little girl into the world, her parents. And that meeting would test both love and patience in ways they had never expected. Not long after their decision, Joy and Daniel prepared themselves and drove down the dusty road that led to Christabel's home. Their shiny car raised clouds of red earth across, and it rode into the small village. For them, it was a journey of hope. For Christabel, it was the beginning of something she had only dreamed about. When they arrived, Christabel ran out barefoot, her face glowing with excitement. "Welcome, sir. Welcome, ma," she said, clapping her hands together with joy. Her siblings peeped from behind the doorway, their little eyes wide with curiosity. Stella, hearing the commotion, came out quickly. Despite her worn clothes, she carried herself with warmth and dignity. "You are welcome," she said, bowing slightly as she wiped her hands on her wrapper. She ushered them inside, offering the little chairs they owned while she remained standing. The room was small, the walls cracked from years of neglect, yet Stella's hospitality filled the room with quiet grace. Daniel cleared his throat gently and began, "Madam, we have come to discuss something important about your daughter." Stella's heart skipped. She looked at Christabel, who was already staring up at the visitors with bright eyes. "We have seen the potential in Christabel. She is a real child, intelligent, respectful, hardworking. We would love to take care of her education, not just her fees, but everything she needs to succeed. We will treat her as our own child." The words fell like rain on dry soil, refreshing Stella's weary soul. She pressed her hands to her chest. Overwhelmed, she knelt down, tears streaming down her face. "God bless you," she whispered. "You don't know what this means to me." Joy reached out and gently held Stella's hand. Her eyes spoke kindness. "Don't worry. We are here for you now. We want to help Christabel grow into the woman she is meant to be. We will care for her as if she were our daughter." She wiped her face quickly and nodded. "Thank you. May God bless you. Christabel, go inside and pack your things," she said firmly. Christabel's heart leapt. She ran into the room, her small hands trembling as she folded her few belongings. Moments later, she returned, clutching her little bag. Stella pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Go, my daughter. May God be with you." And in all of this, Jackson was drunk with wine as usual and did not care about what was happening at all. When Christabel arrived in her new home, it was more than she could have ever imagined. As the car rolled through the gates of the mansion, Christabel pressed her small face against the window, her eyes widening at every sight. She had never seen anything like it. The house itself looked like a palace, with bright lights glowing from the windows, flowers neatly arranged along the pathway, and a fountain at the center that sprayed water into the air. It was like stepping into another world. When the car stopped, she hesitated before stepping down. Her bare feet touched the smooth marble of the compound. so clean it reflects her shadow. She clutched her small bag tightly, afraid it might slip away, afraid the dream might vanish. Inside the house was even more astonishing. The living room stretched wide, filled with soft couches, shining chandeliers, and polished floors. The walls were decorated with paintings, and everywhere she looked, there was something new to marvel at. For a moment, she wondered if she had walked into a storybook. Joy placed a gentle arm around her shoulder. "Welcome home, Christabel," she said softly. For the first time, the little girl felt the meaning of those words. Home, a place where laughter filled the air instead of quarrels, where kindness replaced blows, where love lived in abundance. Her room was more than she had ever dreamed. Bright curtains swayed at the windows, toys filled the shelves, and a bed large enough to make her forget the mat she once shared with her siblings. She ran her hands over the smooth sheets, her lips parted in disbelief. "Is this really for me?" she whispered. "Yes, my dear," Joy replied, watching her with tender eyes. "Everything here is yours." The days that followed were filled with joy. Christabel attended school again, dressed in neat uniforms, carrying her books that smelled of fresh pages. She studied hard, determined not to waste the chance she had been given. At home, she helped Joy in the kitchen, sat with Daniel as he told her stories, and filled the house with sound of a child's laughter. Joy and Daniel felt something they had never felt in years: peace. Their home was no longer empty. Their hearts no longer carried the ache of silence. Christabel brought life, and in return they poured their love into her like water into thirsty soil. But something shocking happened. The peace that Christabel had found in the mansion did not last forever. Her father, Jackson, could not stay away and allow her daughter to enjoy the new life she has found. He came often, staggering through the mansion gates with the smell of palm wine heavy on his breath. His voice rang louder, his words sharp. He accused Joy and Daniel of stealing his daughter, of trying to take what was his. Something he demanded money. Sometimes he demanded money. Other times he threatened to take Christabel back by force. At first, Joy and Daniel dismissed his visit and his threats, hoping he would get tired of them. They told themselves he was only speaking under the influence of drink. But Jackson did not stop. His accusation grew louder, his threats sharper, until the peace of the home began to tremble under his shadow. Jackson's visits became a shadow that refused to leave. Every week he returned, louder, angrier, more desperate. Sometimes he came in the dead of the night, banging on the gate, shouting that his daughter had been stolen from him. Other times he arrived in the daytime, staggering into the compound, demanding for food, money, or simply a chance to insult Joy and Daniel. At first, Christabel would run to her room whenever she heard his voice. She would sit by the window, clutching her pillow tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Joy tried to shield her from it all, but the fear lingered. Even Daniel, whose calmness never failed, began to worry. What if Jackson tried something reckless? What if one day he did more than just shout at the gate? One evening, after Jackson had caused another sin and left in anger, Joy and Daniel sat in their living room, weighed down with heavy thoughts. Daniel spoke first. Joy, this cannot continue. If we keep her here, Jackson will never stop. He will destroy this home, and in the end, it is Christabel who will suffer the most. Joy's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head, unwilling to accept his words. But Daniel, she is happy here. For the first time, she is saved. She is loved. She is going to school. Do you want to send her back into pain, into hunger, into that man's arms? Daniel sighed deeply, his heart torn. You know, I love her as if she were mine. But if we keep her here, Christabel will grow up in the middle of this battle, in the middle of this war, and she may end up being the one most broken. Joy buried her face in her hands. She thought of the nights she had tucked Christabel into bed, the laughter that now filled the mansion, the joy that had returned to her life after years of emptiness. The thought of letting her go was like cutting her own heart into pieces. And then, as if fate were cruel, the decision came sooner than she expected. To protect Christabel from further humiliation, they would have to make the most painful decision of their lives. They would have to let Christabel go. My people, this story is about to take another turn. Sit tightly as we bring you part 2 of the story in our next video. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do so and turn on the notification bell as you expect more stories, more beautiful African stories from us. We love you and we can't wait to have you in our next video. Thank you.